Number 3. Joanne Little. In 1973, when she was about 19 years old, Joanne Little started hanging out with the wrong crowd in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Over the course of several months, Little had several brushes with the law. She had been arrested for theft and for breaking and entering. Then on January 15, 1974, she and her younger brother were charged with breaking and entering. Her brother testified against her, and Little, who was 20 years old, was convicted and sentenced to 7 to 10 years in prison. She was going to serve out her sentence at the Correctional Facility for Women in Raleigh, North Carolina. Before that, she was being held at the Beaufort County Jail. For 81 days, she was the only female inmate in the jail, and she was held in isolation. Then, just before dawn on August 27, 1974, an officer brought a drunk woman into the jail and led her to Little's cell. Outside the cell, the officer noticed a pair of men's shoes. He opened the cell door and found 62-year-old Clarence Olligood, a jailer, lying face down in one of the beds. Joanne Little was gone. Olligood had been stabbed 11 times. He had been stabbed in the temple and the chest. He was naked, except for his socks. He was holding his pants in one hand, and in his other hand was an ice pick, which was the weapon that was used to kill him. His keys were missing because Little had taken them with her when she escaped. Finally, on Olligood's leg, there was a semen stain. A massive manhunt was conducted for Little, and a judge and a sheriff wanted her shot on sight. She turned herself in a week later, and she was charged with first-degree murder. If she was convicted, she was going to be executed via the gas chamber. She said that on the night that Olligood was killed, he came to her cell 3 times asking for sex. She refused him the first 2 times, but on the 3rd time, he came into her cell with an ice pick and forced himself on her. During the sexual assault, she stole the ice pick and started stabbing Olligood. She then took his keys and fled. She said she ran away because she thought that the other jailers would kill her. The case became headline news across the United States. Little received financial and moral support from feminist groups, civil rights groups, and anti-death penalty supporters. Using money that was donated to her legal fund, her defense team used a new scientific technique for jury selection. They surveyed the citizens of Beaufort County and one of its neighboring counties. They found that an overwhelming number of citizens in both counties looked down on black women. Based on their findings, they were able to get the trial moved to Raleigh. The trial started on July 4th, 1975. The district attorney said that the case against Joanne Little was simple. Olligood was from a poor but well-known family. They said he was a good family man and he would never have sexually assaulted Little for the simple fact that he did not like black people. The district attorney said what really happened is that Little seduced Olligood so that she could get him in a vulnerable position so that she could kill him and escape. After all, she was facing 7 to 10 years in prison. Little testified that Olligood, who was twice her size, came into her cell with an ice pick and forced her to perform oral sex on him. After Olligood ejaculated, she grabbed the ice pick and started stabbing him. As she stabbed, he fought back, so she kept stabbing until he stopped moving. The trial lasted for about 5 weeks. The jury was made up of 8 women and 4 men, 7 of whom were white and 5 were black. They were all registered Democrats, and 11 of them opposed the death penalty. They deliberated for 1 hour and 18 minutes. Little was found not guilty because she had acted in self-defense, and she was made a free woman while her conviction for breaking and entering was appealed. In 1975, she missed a court date for her appeal, and a warrant was issued for her arrest. She was arrested in Brooklyn in 1977 and extradited to North Carolina. She fought the extradition because she said she would be killed if she ended up in a North Carolinian prison. Little wasn't killed in prison though, and she ended up serving 21 months. She was arrested again 10 years later in 1989 for driving a car with stolen plates and for illegal possession of a firearm. Since then, she has stayed out of the limelight. Her case is considered a landmark in the history of the American justice system for 2 reasons. It was one of the first cases to use scientific jury selection. Secondly, it was the first time in American history that a woman was acquitted of murder for using deadly force to resist a sexual assault. Number 2. Tom Greer. On the night of July 22, 2014, 80-year-old Tom Greer returned to his home in Bixby Knolls, which is an upscale neighborhood in Long Beach, California. When he walked in, he discovered 28-year-old Andrea Miller and 26-year-old Gus Adams ransacking his home. Miller and Adams tackled the elderly man and broke his collarbone in the process. After taking down Greer, Adams went back to work, trying to open a safe that contained $5,000. He was having trouble opening it, so Miller got off Greer to help him. When she did, Greer made his way to his bedroom, where he got his handgun. He went back and fired his gun at the couple. They ran out of his house with their loot, and Greer chased after them. The police were called a few minutes later. When they arrived, they found Andrea Miller dead on Greer's front lawn. Adams had run away, and he was nowhere to be found. Greer was brought to the police station, and he explained that he walked in on the couple ransacking his home. Greer told the police that he chased them into the alley, and he said that the man ran a lot faster than the woman. He shot at her, and she was hit in the back. She fell to the ground, and Adams kept running. Greer then said to the police, "She says, 'Don't shoot me, I'm pregnant, I'm going to have a baby,' and I shot her anyway." Greer shot Miller a second time in the back as she was lying on the ground. The police asked Greer why he shot Miller the second time, especially since she was lying on the ground begging for her life, and Adams had already run off. He clearly was not in danger anymore. He said, "I was just plain fucking mad, and I was gonna shoot anybody and everybody." He also said, "I shot her, so that's going to leave a message on Adam's mind for the rest of his life." The police chose not to file charges against Greer. An autopsy was performed, and Miller was not pregnant. When Greer was asked by a reporter whether he felt guilty for what happened, Greer said that he did what he had to. The police managed to track down Adams, and he was arrested. Even though he never held a gun, he was eventually charged with the murder of Andrea Miller. He was charged under a theory called the provocative act murder. Basically, Adams was violent with Greer, which caused him to go get his gun, and this resulted in the death of Miller. If Adams didn't attack Greer, then Greer may not have responded with deadly force. In July 2016, Adams was acquitted of murder, but he was convicted of burglary and robbery. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Number 1. William Masters II. On the night of January 31st, 1995, 18-year-old Cesar Rene Arce and 20-year-old David Hillo were under the Hollywood Freeway in Los Angeles, California. The two men were spray painting graffiti on one of the freeway's pillars. Shortly after midnight, 35-year-old William Masters II, a former Marine, approached the men. First, he wrote down their license plate. What happened next is where things get controversial. Masters said that Arce and Hillo confronted him. He said that Hillo threatened him with a screwdriver and told him to hand over the paper that he was writing on and his wallet. Masters said he refused, and Arce lunged at him. Masters then pulled out his gun and started shooting. Both men ended up taking a bullet. Hillo was shot in the buttocks, and Arce was shot in the back of the torso. Hillo survived, and he was released from prison after a short stay. 18-year-old Cesar Rene Arce was pronounced dead at the hospital. Hillo denied that things happened the way that Masters said they did. He admitted that he was holding a screwdriver, but he said that he never threatened Masters. Hillo said that Masters just opened fire on them. The police ended up releasing Masters after about 6 hours. They said it was a clear case of self-defense, but critics immediately had a problem with the police's decision. First, Masters was not licensed to carry a gun. Also, both men were shot in the back, so at the very least, they were running away from him when he shot them. Lastly, what was Masters doing walking under the freeway after midnight in the first place? People thought he was walking there because he was looking to provoke a confrontation as an excuse to use his gun. Masters, who worked as a movie extra, was a strong advocate for the Second Amendment. Before moving to Los Angeles, he had run-ins with the law in Texas for carrying a sword with him. In the week after the shooting, Masters did several interviews, and he answered some of his critics' questions. He said that before the shooting, he had fantasized many times about confronting a criminal in the act, holding out his 9mm, and stopping the crime. He thought it was a citizen's duty to be armed and ready to defend the victims of crime. He did not deny that he was walking around that night looking for an excuse to shoot someone. He simply said that he was free to walk anywhere he wanted at any time. Masters said that he did not think he was the one responsible for the death of Arce, whom he called a Mexican skinhead. He said it was Arce's mother's fault. He said she murdered her son by being an irresponsible, uncaring mother. He then went on to say that if she had done a better job raising her son, who had just died days earlier, then he wouldn't have been out that night committing an armed robbery. Masters was asked if he wished that Arce didn't die, and Masters said that it would have been preferable if he survived. Masters pointed out that he performed CPR on Arce until the paramedics arrived. He said that he risked the chance of contracting HIV or AIDS by doing CPR without proper protection. However, Masters also thought that if Arce did survive, then he might have gone to prison because it would have been the testimony of two men versus his testimony. When he was asked if he thought he would ever be convicted of murder, Williams said no. He said that they would never be able to find 12 people who would convict him. He then called Arce a racial slur, and he said that everyone is afraid of being in the same situation that he was in. He said that people liked his story because this time, the potential victim was able to kill his killer. Even though Arce was supposedly killed in the commission of a robbery, Hillo was never charged with robbery. The district attorney said that there was no evidence of a robbery, and it would have been Masters' word against Hillo's word. The district attorney ended up charging Masters with carrying a concealed and loaded firearm. He was ordered to get rid of all his guns. He was given 3 years of probation, and he was to spend 30 days cleaning up graffiti. After he was convicted, Masters said that he enjoyed taking walks late at night through dangerous neighborhoods, and even though he ended up killing someone on his last stroll, he would continue to take these walks. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you found that interesting. And of course, thank you so much for donating. But that's all for this month. Thanks again, and tune in again next month.